All right, the die is cast, the one ring has been thrown into the mountain, and my daughter is sleeping in the other room with my wife, so I can start the inaugural podcast. I'm Matt Howes, and this is Shits and Giggles. So I decided to start this podcast because when I first learned my wife was pregnant, I actually couldn't find a whole lot of resources for guys to just go and find out stupid, weird questions that they didn't feel comfortable asking. And really, honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of resources for guys to even get together in groups. There's all these fucking mommy groups and mom vlogs about, hey guys, just telling you about my stay-at-home life where I'm the best parent on earth. But there's not a whole lot of dad stuff, and if there is, it's a lot like, hey guys, I'm a dad, and you're the, you gotta man up and have the manly stuff and all that stuff, which is really fucking obnoxious because, I don't know about you, I'm fine with being just a normal, run-of-the-mill dad. I love being a parent. Honestly, since I was very young, I've always wanted to have kids and be married. I have been married, and now I have the most perfect daughter on the face of the earth, Penny Grace. You'll hear more about her in the coming episodes, but I just wanted to throw it out there that I definitely have a better child than you. And I mean, look, you can call it bias, you can call it what you will, but my daughter is better than your daughter. And that's okay. You don't have to have a great daughter like mine. You can have one that's like just as close, just not quite there, but that's how it is. Anyway, I wanted to kind of create a resource for myself to have an outlet to talk about weird things that make me uncomfortable and that gross me out and didn't make sense to me. Like, there's a lot of those wonderful things, but what's great about being a parent is that you actually have no choice but to deal with that shit. So I figured if anyone else out there is like me, it's nice to hear that other people are going through the relative same nonsense that you are. Anyway, back to being an amazing parent. I have been a parent now for about 25 days. Our hospital story is probably one I'll regale you with another time, but it was a long labor turned into C-section after a failed induction, which was just a nightmare. But we eventually had our lovely daughter, stayed in the hospital for a few days on those wonderful pull-out couches, and here we are 25-ish days later. A little bit about the last few days here at the almost 4-week mark. Yeah, almost 4-week mark. We're entering what some of the apps are calling the new developmental stage, the next developmental stage. And of course, all these wonderful apps are just like, yeah, exactly. 28 days, you're going to hit this mark. And at 3 weeks, 3 months, 4 years, it's ridiculous how specific they can be. And unfortunately, they are surprisingly accurate, but I think it's all hoo-ha and nonsense. But my daughter, who was never really sleeping through the night very much, she was sleeping mostly all day, which is what we thought caused her to not sleep through the night very well, but we've gotten some great sleeps here and there. Well, apparently this new stage of development, this new milestone, if you will, has pushed her into the I'm up and fussy, I need to be held, which I love doing, don't get me wrong, but I'm actually going back to work. My wife is home on maternity leave, so she's kind of stuck with, I want to do a bunch of shit, but my kid needs me to hold her, which we all love doing, but, it's, could you give me a minute? Could I take 5 minutes to do the dishes or some shit like that? But it's all part of it, and they all say, I get a call from my uncle, I get a call from my father, they're all like, oh, cherish these the moments that you'll never get back, this lovely part of having a newborn where they need you, every little part they need you more than anything in the world, because eventually they won't. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, and I will, and I do cherish every single one of these little moments, but I also am not afraid to say that I have hit a goddamn wall at least 3 times not physically, but emotionally, at least 3 times during my daughter's life. There was the first time in the hospital where I almost as much, we at the hospital, we had one of those people who are just like, oh no, we don't do pacifiers here. And I'm like, well, we've tried to feed about 1,000 times. She's not hungry and she's trying to suck on something. So give me a goddamn pacifier. I'm like, well, we only do it if you're asking for it. I'm like, well, I'm asking for it. I mean, do I have to buy it or are you going to give it to me? Anyways, I got the pacifier, and after several hours on no sleep, this was like 3 days of her being awake, I almost lost it. And I, do you know what they say? You put her down, and you just take the pillow and you just scream into the pillow, because it is infinitely frustrating and yet it's infinitely endearing at the same time. I have a couple friends at work who were asking me about, oh, are you getting any sleep? And I'm like, no, I'm not. But the difference would be when you don't get a lot of sleep because you're out partying or you got woken up a billion times because of noise from neighbors. It's one thing being woken up by the screams, cries, and noises of your daughter. It's something about that mentally just kind of makes it so that you can do it without going absolutely batshit crazy. And any parents out there, new parents and old parents alike, probably understand the screaming into a pillow for goddamn sure. But yeah, there's definitely something about it being your kid. Obviously everyone, it's my kid is the reason I get up in the morning now, So it doesn't, well, actually my kid literally is the reason I get up in the morning now, excuse me, both figuratively and emotionally. But yeah, it's a really good time right now in my life. I feel I'm getting a lot of new emotions I never thought that I'd you never know, you're not quite ready. When they're like, oh, you have a kid, it's just the greatest thing you'll ever have. And some people are like, well, I had a kid and I didn't feel any different for a while, and then I hit it, and I remember I had this little lovely baby girl grabbed my finger the second she came out of her mother. We had the C-section. She just wrapped her little hand around mine, and she had this pointy little head. I'll get back to that later on, but I felt these emotions, and I am the happiest person on earth, and anyone who I've talked to can tell that I'm just on cloud nine. And one of the other things I've noticed, and I think anyone, especially in this newer phase of parenting, is I really couldn't give less of a shit of your problems. Like, I am only caring about what's going on in my life. You could come up to me for the most part, I mean, notwithstanding actual issues, but like, you had a shitty weekend, I'm pretty much just nodding through your story, just reliving my wonderful new experience of having a kid in my life. And don't feel bad, I probably really didn't give a shit about your problems before I had a kid, but now my excuse is I have my wonderful daughter, and that's my entire world. I don't have room in my life for anyone else's problems. So that's definitely a feeling I have been experiencing a lot of lately when I'm just listening to certain people just randomly complaining about stuff, and I'm just like, I don't care. It's not that important. Once you have a kid, it puts a whole shit ton into perspective about what really is important in life, and it's just my lovely, beautiful daughter. But, moving on from that, as in going back to hitting the wall, it's not a bad thing to admit that you get fucking frustrated with your kid. They just because they're, it's, especially the new ages, give your kid whatever they want, don't say no, there's no boundaries, blah, blah, blah. It's okay to be pissed off, even though the baby has no control over any of their actions, that they're literally a baby. They can only eat, shit, sleep, and repeat, with crying intermittently peppered throughout, almost like Salt Bae throughout the situation, if you catch my reference. But it's okay to be frustrated. It's not the end of the world if you get mad. Try not to scream at your kid. I have, but not really, but I've just been like, why are you doing this to me right now? My wife has luckily been there to quell my 3:00 in the morning, like, if this is the 5th time, I don't even, and making bottles we got these bottles that are just like ready-made, shake them up, Similac. You put the nipple on them and blah, blah. But once you run out and you're like, I got to make a real bottle at 3 o'clock in the morning, well, goddamn. That's not fun with a screaming baby and no sleep and having to go back to work in the morning. It is okay to be frustrated. And, I mean, what right do I have to tell anyone how to live their life? But I'll tell you right now that if you're anything like me, you've been really aggravated. But it's not an aggravation like, oh my God, I'm so mad. It's more of like, I want to fix this because my lovely child is upset in some way, and knowing that they can only communicate in 1 of 3 ways kind of can dumb down some of that anger. But it's not at the kid, it's at the situation, and not the kid from the Jersey Shore, but the situation you're dealing with. But all those wonderful things come with being a parent. As far as I know, I'm still learning. 25 days strong, yo. I mean, come on, I'm the best. I think someone had mentioned to me, like, why are you doing a podcast? You're a new parent. What qualifies you to be a new parent? I'm like, well, first off, bro, I bought the equipment. So write that shit down. Okay. Dial that down in your notebook right there. Okay. Second off, I mean, it qualifies me as much as, having a kid, getting my wife pregnant. I have all the things that would make me qualified to telling you that I'm the best parent ever. So, listen to me. Don't listen to me. That's how you want to handle it. I'm just enjoying having a nice outlet for talking, and I'm open to questions. I have a lot of answers for dads for pregnancy stuff. I will do another episode based on her pregnancy at some point for sure, but I'm open to that because I dealt with, I was there, went to all the doctor's appointments. You're not an asshole if you don't go to all the doctor's appointments. I just had the opportunity to, so I did. Relax, everybody. But couple of things that really fucking weirded me out about having a kid. I guess, or not just having a kid, a couple fucking weird things about your kid once you have the kid. And I've been saying this to everyone who has ears. I didn't know, and I guess this is my fault. I guess I never really thought too much about it. I know when you have a kid, you cut the cord. I did that. I can liken the feeling of cutting the cord to perhaps cutting raw chicken, maybe a little bit more rubbery. But notwithstanding, I knew you cut the cord, but for some reason I thought there was something that they did afterwards. I thought it was symbolic. Dad cuts the cord, and this guy, he hands me the scissors. I'll try to get it as close as you can to this little spot because they clamp it off, and I did. And then it just sits there. Yeah, it just sits there, and it slowly begins to rot off of your child's body for the next 2 goddamn weeks. And the fact that I brought this up to like 5 fucking people, including one of my friends who just had a kid, and no one found this weird. I'm like, you got the goddamn Walking Dead sitting in your baby's part. Like, oh God, what if it just continues this rotting piece of your baby's body? And I never knew of that. And I found that out at one of the baby classes I was at the one baby class that I was at. And I literally don't, I don't know why people aren't as weirded out by this as I am, but my daughters actually fell out. Apparently, when we were kids, they used to clean them with alcohol. Well, they used to do a lot more with alcohol when we were kids for sure, but they'd clean them with alcohol, they'd clean them, and they get infected, blah, blah, blah. But apparently the new jam is to leave them alone. And when we were kids, it'd take 2 weeks. My kids fell off the day we came back from the hospital, and I was like the happiest person alive. I was like, fucking A. I'm done with this, because you have to avoid it. You can't put anything on it. You can't put the diaper on top of it. Seeping under one second. I'm okay. I'm all right. It just, I mean, if you don't find that fucking gross, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you, but that's that anyways with the umbilical cord. Another thing is I'm a guy. I've never owned a vagina myself. I had a daughter, and when I was in that one baby class I took, I remember, there's a bunch of 4 guys there, never had kids. They're all doing the same fucking class I am. They're showing the football hole, showing how to swaddle. None of that shit sticks. You really learn trial by fire when you have your kid, but whatever. So I raised my hand at the end. I'm like, listen, this is going to sound like a fucking weird question. How do you clean shit out of a vagina? I don't have one. I'm not with the equipment. I don't know how to use it, but I will do the best I can. It feels weird for me. It's just not something I do on a daily basis. So I'd like to know. And they kind of looked at me like, oh, no, you'll get it. And I want to be like, do you tell the surgeons before they go into surgery, like, hey, I don't quite know how to do an appendectomy. Oh, it's okay. You'll get it. But notwithstanding, I did actually have a woman, because when this kid came out and they brought us to the recovery room for after the C-section, the woman was there, and the first thing my daughter does is take this big, massive Mercronin black tar shit, and it's filling it's sticky. It's like the weirdest consistency I've ever seen in my entire life, and let's just say it went every goddamn where. And so this woman was like, okay, here's you do front to back. Here's another thing. I got these packs of wipes all over my house. I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, even with guys, like toilet paper, use a couple balled up rolls of toilet paper, it's fine. No, you use I used a whole pack of these baby wipes, the first shit that she took. And so don't be afraid to use too many baby wipes either, because I'm like, oh God, what if I use too many? No, use all the fucking baby wipes. They come in hundreds. I have a 900 pack box of baby wipes that we got from Costco. Just use the shit out of them. Plus, they don't shit that much anyways. They're drinking. They shit like she had maybe in the hospital 2 or 3 shits, and then she has like one every other day. Now she's having like one a day. So use the baby wipes. Use as many as you goddamn please. It's really not something. That was something I thought that I'd had to use sparingly. Use them liberally, please. But you do. Luckily, that woman, she taught me just very simple, just front to back. Don't double use. Don't like wipe down and then wipe again. But yeah, it's something weird. I just wanted to know. And again, that's another reason I have this podcast, because I don't have a place to ask these questions without people looking at me weird. And I'm like, I could ask another dude, but then it's like, hey, all right, hey, Bob, you had a new kid, right? Yeah, I did. How do you clean shit out of a vagina? That's not really a great conversational topic, maybe after a few drinks, but then I think that might get a little weirder at that point. It's just odd to ask in general. So I'm giving you my perspective on the subject, and you take it or leave it. And then the last weird thing that I found with my kid, anyways, and apparently this is a fairly common thing, was she apparently had a blocked tear ducts. Like she had a lot of mucus was coming out of her eyes. She looked like she had conjunctivitis a lot. Lots of crusties all over the face, which is fairly normal. It is what it is. But, there were a couple of days where it looked like she was going to crust over. And apparently that's just a normal thing, which, again, there's a lot of, as you've never been a parent before, there's a lot of stuff where it's just like, that's normal. It'll fix itself. And so, my wife looks it up, and I'm like, oh, just look it up, see what's going on. We'll talk to the doctor about it. And the internet's like, yeah, that's pretty normal. Oh, no, she actually reached out to her doctor about it. And the doctor responded, because we have these things where you can just email your doctor. And the doctor was like, yeah, that's pretty normal. If it doesn't clear up in a year, then we have an issue. I'm like, oh, if it doesn't clear up in a year, okay, I'll be waiting with bated breath in a year to make sure that this is not cleared up. I feel like I definitely would have gone to the hospital before then. But that's another one of those things where it's weird, but it's fairly normal. So I guess it's not something to worry about. But we ended up getting antibiotic wipes, or we got antibiotics from our doctor anyways, just to check it out. We haven't used them, but we have them now if we need them, provided they don't expire. But, that's that. And the next thing I want to talk about is downtime, of which there is very little, especially at the point I'm going through right now. So what I do in my downtime, what me and my wife do in our downtime when we're not trying to, cart our daughter everywhere to show everybody, which is a goddamn nightmare. I'll talk about it another time. I caught up. I watched Rick and Morty, all 3 seasons of Rick and Morty, in the intermittent times where she was asleep during the day and not at nighttime. I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV, trying to catch up on the new expansion, because I love video games. I think that was obvious by my intro. I'm a pretty good sci-fi geek kind of guy. And mostly, it's like, the big thing they say is when she goes down, you go down. And for goddamn sure, the first 2 weeks, that's how it was. It gets harder when you're home and you're, like, feeling like you're not doing anything. My wife was very like that. She's like, I feel like I'm not doing anything, so she's up puttering around. And I'm like, well, this is why you don't feel rested, because you don't get any sleep at nighttime. But That's just the way it is. Some people are more doers, and you're neither worse for wear either way, because you're only getting a couple hours of sleep at a time, which is not going to get you a whole lot of rest, but it's going to prevent you from going clinically insane, supposedly. But yeah, other than that, it's just I started going back to work, so I actually have, I guess this is weird to say, but I think any guy who works at an office versus being at home with your kid, you do have a little more free time at work than you do at home, because every 10 minutes you're not being pulled over to do a diaper or whatever. But it's still weird, because I'm checking on my wife like every half an hour just to make sure everything's okay. But you ultimately have time to kind of get your thoughts together and figure out what your game plan is going to be when you get home, which is going to be lather, rinse, repeat of chaos and love and just emotions you probably have never fucking felt. If you haven't had a kid, and everyone's like, oh, well, you don't know till you know. But if you haven't fucking had a kid, you don't fucking know the love and just all this feeling that you get from having this little life that you created, this little carbon copy of you and your wife, and it's just amazing. So I highly recommend those who haven't, give it a shot. I guess do what the hell you want. I really don't give a shit if you have kids, to be honest with you, because I only care about mine. I will leave you with this. I'm wrapping up here, so I'm just going to leave you with a few things. You can hit me up on Twitter. I've created a Twitter and an Instagram as of right now for this podcast. It's at Shits and Gigs with 2 G's, so Shits and Giggs 42 on both Twitter and Instagram. Shits and Gigs 42 on Twitter and Instagram. I plan to have at least once a week, maybe multi-weekly episodes, as I may have said earlier, and I definitely plan on updating the various social medias regularly, and you can get us anywhere else podcasts are found. I will leave you with my final words. My child is better than your child, and vaccinate your fucking kids or keep them away from mine. Thank you.